Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Million. The first weekend of the Modern Warfare 2 beta is now coming to a close, and that means no more high kill games, crazy snipes, and funny glitches for a little bit, but that doesn't mean that we can't talk about feedback. My previous video about my opinions on Modern Warfare 2 was focused on the maps, and while trying to keep everything concise, I decided to split my thoughts throughout multiple videos, with this one focusing on gameplay. Gameplay for me includes weapon balancing, movement, game modes, perks, basically anything that affects the general player experience. Most of my thoughts were compiled before the new article that Infinity Ward put out, so please keep that in mind while I go over some of the things that I experienced throughout my first weekend of the beta. I will revise my thoughts after weekend 2 is over. As such, we've now been able to experience all of these things throughout the first weekend, so let's talk about it. Starting with weapons, the beta offered us a tease into what the new Gunsmith 2.0 looks and feels like, and with my understanding, the general consensus is that mostly everyone likes it. There are some things missing though, as well as some of the UI being a tad broken, such as actual numerical values to stats that people are wanting for their weapons, as well as just the text overlapping when seeing the descriptions of the stats given by the attachments. Personally, I love the universal attachment system that you can unlock for each platform, which encourages the use of different weapons and play styles to get people out of their comfort zone for a bit to see what they like. Although it is sad to see that this beta is about giving feedback for things such as weapon balancing and the feel of the weapons and other bug fixes for these weapon attachments, etc. But most of the weapons we have access to right now, unless you did the overkill perk setup for the Lockman platform, is just the M4 platform. We can't level up the weapons such as the Expedite 12, the 74U, or the Socken LMG. If you're wanting to test these features for feedback, why are you limiting these weapons in this way? Are you afraid that certain attachments for, let's say, the Expedite 12 will make it into an overwhelming powerhouse? Or are you just trying to get feedback on the base version? Only the devs know, and I'm not sure why you would put these weapons in if you didn't want feedback on how they feel, attachments included. With that out of the way, let's talk actual weapon balancing for what we did have access to. The M4 has always been kind of the starting AR that usually does everything. It's always been versatile in terms of its stats while not necessarily being too good in one place statistically, and this still holds true inside of Modern Warfare 2. Most people gravitated towards the M4 as it was one of the only ARs you had access to, unless you had unlocked the Lockman 556 with the overkill perk. I never felt the M4 being too powerful or underpowered in most situations. It excels exactly where it needs to be at close to medium range engagements. Its recoil is manageable and predictable right off the bat too. Overall, nailed it with the base M4, which is most likely why the platform is the one we have access to the most. During my time, I also used the Lockman 556. Personally, this AR was strong, but the trade-off was that it was pretty slow and didn't have as much range. I felt the Lockman had more damage fall off than the M4 and was just overall better for close range engagements, but only if you put a few ADS attachments on, as the base ADS felt lower in comparison to the base M4. It also didn't help that I could hardly see what I was trying to shoot after I started firing. The Lockman 556 definitely trades maneuverability, recoil control, and more for less damage range and better damage per bullet. I would like to maybe see it compete more at the medium range engagements, as it usually loses out to the M4. Moving on to the 74U, oh my word, the 74U, while classified as an AR, still feels like an SMG, and the developers even call it an SMG, but it's in the AR category. It absolutely performed great at close quarters, but immediately got outclassed at medium engagements. Its base recoil also felt pretty bad alongside the terrible muzzle flash. It just overall made for an unpleasant time tracking my targets with this weapon. I know that the 74U in reality is chambered in an AR variant, but I feel like you shouldn't put it alongside the AR category in the game if you're saying it's an SMG. Players are just used to that sentiment that a 74U is an SMG. And right now, the other SMG in the game, the MP5 that you can unlock inadvertently through overkill again, just does everything it can do and better. The M16, which is one of my favorites going all the way back to Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, is now kind of in a weird spot for me in this game. I played around with this thing for hours trying to get the hang of it. In Modern Warfare 2, it seems like the M16 has so much base recoil that by the time you get to the third bullet of the initial burst, if you're aiming for the upper torso or even headshots, it's incredibly inconsistent with kills, as you need all 3 bullets to hit for most of your kills. Even with all of the recoil smoothness and recoil control attachments, it still felt the same for me. The M16, when you aim for the lower body and it kicks up, like, you'll typically always one burst targets. Unless you change your playstyle to aim lower, most people will feel this gun is consistently inconsistent. If you do end up not getting the kill on the initial first burst fire, you're most likely going to lose the engagement as well due to how fast most of the time to kill is in the game. Once you get used to where you need to aim with the M16 though, it can be a very hard hitter, but I would love to see the burst discrepancy of the bullets toned down, at least on the initial first burst burst and not the back-to-back firing, because it kind of makes sense there to have more and more recoil the faster you fire your burst. But I think that the initial burst should be on target. There's also a new category of weapons inside of Modern Warfare 2 called battle rifles. In the beta, we were only able to play with one of them from the M4 platform, the F-TAC Recon, which I'm sure in Weekend 2 we will get access to the Lockman 7.62. The F-TAC provides a high range 2 to 3 shot kill while also providing some versatility for medium engagements, as you can switch fire modes to make it full auto. This weapon, in my opinion, is the sleeper of the beta. For those that can aim well and control recoil, you'll find yourselves being able to dominate matches. Single fire mode offers control for long distance, and typically you can outgun most ARs when you are fighting them long range. While not as good as snipers, it offers a different playstyle for those that want the mobility of an AR but the range of a marksman or sniper rifle. I can see this thing being almost too strong if there were other attachments that considerably decreased its recoil. I'm just hoping we don't see that. PC players also might have a field day with this one come Weekend 2 with that recoil control. Moving on to SMGs, we only had access to two technically, the Lockman Sub and the FSS Hurricane. The Lockman Sub, also known as the MP5, is the absolute monster of the beta. This thing has one of the, if not the fastest time to kill in the game right now, along with insane ADS speeds, little to no recoil. Like, there's almost no downsides to this gun. I can't find one other than it loses at super long range, which is to be expected because it's an SMG, but I didn't put any attachments, or at least I don't think there are any attachments currently that increase its range, and I can beat out M4s at its medium range thanks to its easy to control recoil. It's a laser beam. This thing is literally busted. It definitely needs to be toned down in some way, most likely on the range side, along with a minor TTK adjustment. It's incredibly good in a bad way compared to the other weapons I've experienced. 100% needs adjusting to bring it in line with the rest of the weapons in the beta. The FSS Hurricane, on the other hand, while being really good for close quarters engagements, fell off more at the medium to long range with a bit more visual recoil, so it couldn't just beam players from long distances like the Lockman Sub. The trade-off is that you get this massive 50 round mag by default, great handling and good movement speed. This and the base M4A1 from the M4 platform definitely seem to have the most polish with weapon balancing, which I assume is why we were meant to only get these weapons to play around with in the first place, as personally the other weapons should be balance tuned to the M4 platform since it serves as a good base to start from. The 5.56 Icarus is an LMG. You basically just go haha burr with slightly less damage than ARs while having a huge mag size and less movement speed. But I will say this gun, compared to every other LMG weapon, has felt sort of like a pea shooter. It has a much longer time to kill. I think it kind of needs a little bit of damage bump to compete with the higher damage LMGs that have almost the same maneuverability. It has very little recoil though, and can be converted to a faster build with these attachments. Just give it a slight damage bump to make it in line with the rest of the LMG category. The Rap H is a weapon I struggle with the most for LMGs, as they're meant for continuous fire, and the recoil on this was literally unbearable with no sights or no attachments. Holy moly, this thing was just absolutely bouncing in my face. Muzzle flash all over the place, and the iron sights just hovering what you're shooting. It was really hard to kind of deal with. It's a really slow LMG, so pre-aiming corners is your best bet. It hits hard, but it's hard to compete when everything else has a manageable recoil versus this monstrosity. Attachments do help quite a bit, but as for the base version, maybe the visual recoil could be toned down a bit, along with the muzzle flash changes coming this weekend. I think it should be in a better spot. Moving on to the Socken MG38. Holy moly, for this thing having no attachments, it fries. It has surprisingly a good time to kill, huge mag reserves, controllable recoil with iron sights. Again, no attachments on this thing. This LMG, if not watched, will be a major player for the top weapons when Modern Warfare 2 releases. I'm glad the reload speed, mobility, ADS time, and sprint to fire time are all like way slower than the rest of the LMGs, because it needs a balance in some way when it shreds like this. The fact that this LMG's time to kill competes with my MP5 clips, and with how easy it is to use with zero attachments, maybe tone this LMG's damage down just a bit if it's going to be working like this. Continuing on, we got marksman rifles. We only had access to one in the form of a default class. The Lockwood Mark II came with a predetermined set of attachments, so we don't know how it feels with no attachments until Weekend 2 starts. However, with what I did play, I found the Mark II carbine to be super consistent compared to MW 2019. It's pretty much the same gun from that game. However, there are two things that kind of stood out to me after using it. One involving the gun, the other with hitboxes. So let's start with the easy one to explain. Why am I getting hit markers on a headshot at range with this thing? I'm not sure if I managed to just get a one-off clip from the small time I was recording with this, but even if it's through, you know, a small wooden wall or like a little tiny bit of couch, I feel that with the time to kill of everything else in the game, I think it should still be a one-hit kill to the head, considering it's a risk reward weapon with aim skill. The other thing I noted is that I don't know if it's bullet velocity or what, but having my shots miss like this all the time is extremely aggravating. I would have accepted a hit marker here for shooting his shoulder, obviously, but I didn't even get that. The other issue with hitboxes is if a player is running and you shoot where the typical one-hit kill range is for the Mark II, but their hand moves perfectly where that bullet intersects in front of your shot, but the one-hit kill box is right behind their hand, there's no damage overlap. So it only registers as shooting their hand and not their upper body where the one-hit kill would have been. It's a game, I know it's hard to program, but having instances where it feels like you should have won the gunfight because you aimed at the one-hit kill box, it kind of sucks not winning that gunfight. Again, it's a game, I know that's hard to program. That's just a slight nuance I kind of saw. If it gets fixed, that would be awesome. We're almost done with the weapons, just a few more things to talk about, like the Signal 50, and honestly props to Infinity Ward for making it feel like an actual 50 caliber round that I'm shooting downrange, because man, does this thing sound incredibly boomy. It also just feels like a powerhouse when the one-hit kill is so large, with the trade-off of being insanely slow. But it was nowhere near the ADS times of Vanguard, which I love. Definitely struck a good balance here with the first sniper. I can't wait to see what's in store for the more fast-paced ones. Both pistols were in a good spot too. Not insane damage, but could get a couple of kills in case you needed to reload your primary. But really shine with the ledge hanging, offering a whole new playstyle for game modes, especially in search and destroy, allowing players to ascertain knowledge or even get a kill with people holding high walls. Finally, launchers, which there's not much to say for me personally. They are pretty good where they are right now. I think I didn't use them that much. I mean, I maybe got 2 kills with them, but from what I experienced as well as what my friends had to say about them, they are fairly decent and actually usable in core matches, even against players with EOD on. One complaint I've heard is that at least the Pila's explosive radius is a bit small, especially compared to some of the grenades in the game. Holy crap. I made it through my TED talk of weapons, but I'm still nowhere near done yet on my input, especially for perks, Scorestreaks, the minimap, and more. Are you ready? Because I'm pretty sure this is where most people are going to be split. In Modern Warfare 2, the new perk system works in a way that no other COD has before. You can pick 2 base perks to take with you at the beginning of the match, and 2 others as you progress through the match. 1 bonus perk and 1 ultimate perk. While honestly, I've been okay with the changes, it personally hasn't affected me too much. It has the issues of players not having these perks when they join mid-match, or play less skillfully, not streaking up each life. I know the base earn rate of these perks will be sped up come next weekend, but for now, let's talk about how it is. On average, most players won't earn their bonus perk until about 2 minutes into the match with kills and objectives, and their ultimate perk until about 5 to 6 minutes in, which at that point is halfway through the match. The problem becomes clear when you join a game in progress. Other players that have already been getting score for kills or objective plays will already have their bonus or even ultimate perks, but because of it working based off of the game time, it only calculates for that game time. You'll only receive half your progress for your bonus perk, or maybe just the bonus perk and waiting on your ultimate, while everyone else is already running with their full perk package. It puts some players at a considerable disadvantage. It honestly feels like a rich gets richer kind of system instead of everybody being on the same level of playing field right off the bat. And speaking of disadvantages, Ghost is now in that ultimate perk slot, meaning if anyone gets a UAV, you're going to be displayed on the radar for the earliest parts of the match, pretty much no matter what. For only a 3 kill streak, this makes it super important now to run counter UAVs, but it also just gives free information to those who are trying to combat being always seen with silencers and Ghost, and they would just have to be up on the radar thanks to one person getting 3 kills in 1 life. Which leads me into another thing. I don't understand why we have the classic style of minimap. People don't show up on the minimap when shooting, even without silencers. The minimap is there to visually aid players in understanding locations. Personally, I don't care about it. I play enough hardcore to the point where it doesn't bother me, but what about the players who are audibly impaired? They use visual information as much as possible. You're literally taking out an accessibility feature for most players. That's why people are mad, not because you are promoting a I see a red dot, I chase like a cat playstyle, but because it's something that has been loved by the community for years. It helps visually aid people and rely less on their audio and playing your game, which by the way is already chaotic as it is thanks to the map designs. And overall, your tactical playstyles, while I'm glad are being supported, shouldn't be the one and only playstyle. I don't get it. Your community gives you feedback and you just don't want to listen to it. That's my problem with it. That's all I have to say about it. I'm not for or against it. I'm pretty neutral right now. What I don't don't like is something being taken out, and now you're kind of ruining the experience for people who might have audible impairment. Maybe they want to play Call of Duty, but they don't have access to headphones. Maybe they're playing, with speakers, or maybe, they're playing in a noisy environment. It's there to help people and more accessibility for your game, and you're taking that accessibility away. I don't get it. Like, I don't care about not showing up on the minimap or whatever, and I can use my headphones myself to help me pinpoint locations just fine, like I did in every other Call of Duty playing hardcore. But you're literally telling audibly impaired players to use this insanely tiny, stupid compass to help them. Whenever I play close up to my monitor, and it's still incredibly hard to see when I'm a foot, maybe 2 feet away from my monitor, and that's hard to see while also making sure to watch my corners and play the game. Case in point is that this new perk system combined with the UAVs, minimap changes, it's like they want one thing but not the other. You can have your cake, but you can't eat it. You don't want players showing up on the map for shooting, but you want all players to show up on the map until only about halfway through your match, thanks to how strong UAVs are early game. Counter UAVs are accessible, and I use them quite often myself now, but now it seems like a necessity to have one whenever a UAV goes up in the sky, which you normally can't do if you're on a kill streak. So the person streaking up, you yourself only gets one get out of jail free card until they get Ghost. I know they are trying to make Ghost less of a crutch perk, but this just makes me want to use it even more with how easy it is to get info from footsteps, gun audibility, to UAVs, to people running bird's eye, to basically make their portable radars and UAVs act like advanced UAVs. We'll have to see how fast the earn rate is this coming weekend, but a lot of this seems like a double-edged sword. I'm on the fence either way. I can still perform well with all these changes, but the logic behind it is just not making sense to me. That's all I have to say about that. Moving on to movement, there are only a few changes I would like to see, aka I would love to see this out of the game. This is disgusting. People want slide canceling so bad that they find a way to circumvent it and bring it back. I get people want to have something, but truly I've never seen where it helps someone entirely, where you have to make your whole play style around slide canceling and doing 360s unless you're just resetting your sprint speed. There's no need for this over-the-top excess. Another complaint I've been seeing is the bunny hopping. Personally, I think it should stay. It gives players a movement option, especially if they're taking away slide canceling entirely. Call of Duty is still not this over-the-top realism shooter. Having some form of quote-unquote arcadey movement is okay. It allows for a skill to be learned for most players, how to time your jumps perfectly for an effective movement mechanic, because bunny hopping is a skill. You have to time it perfectly in order to execute it. It's becoming a blend of both styles of the genre. Moving on, we have footsteps, game audio. In the game, it's incredibly loud. While I like hearing audio, it's insane to me that without something like Amplify, the footsteps could be this loud. I literally sound like I have the world's largest boots on running around the map. It's even louder than a game like Counter-Strike in some cases. But that wasn't my only complaint. During gunfights, it was super annoying to me that audio overlap. Just from a teammate firing on my left side, I couldn't hear footsteps coming in on my right sometimes, especially with how loud they were. I don't know if that's intentional, but I know a lot of players will be annoyed when they find out that players can sneak up on them at full speed without dead silence on, because the game cuts out footsteps sometimes, almost like Apex. Before I continue further, I just wanted to make a side note of flashbangs and stun grenades. While I think they are a viable choice for most players and should allow for better positioning after hitting a target, what I don't get is why players are not rewarded for reacting to them in any way. Take, for example, flash grenades. In most games that are meant for more quote-unquote tactical play, you can look away from a flashbang to have a reduced effect, rewarding players for their fast response time. Why is that just not a thing in Modern Warfare 2 right now? And stun grenades last way too long in my opinion, unless you're running battle hardened. You can only counter these two things with battle hardened. You can't react in time. You can't look away from the flash grenade and be rewarded for a less visualized effect on your screen. I don't know why it's like this, but please make these changes for the love of God. Moving on, game modes in the Modern Warfare 2 beta, a lot of new ones came in, including Knockout, Prisoner Rescue, the third-person mosh pit, along with some other game modes coming later, such as Raid and DMZ. With the taste of what we got for these new game modes, most of them felt super fun to play. I didn't once think to myself of, why does this game mode exist? Most of my friends enjoy them, and even Twitter users have been liking it, which is saying something. Knockout and Prisoner Rescue offered alternatives to the S&D style modes, allowing for revives, more risky plays, and less of defending and more kind of in-your-face gameplay, while the third-person mosh pit offers a more casual experience for those that like party modes. The first weekend of Modern Warfare 2's beta was incredible incredibly fun with a lot of tweaks and changes coming already in the second weekend. If you haven't seen all of the changes coming next weekend, I'll link the article down below for you to read. While Infinity Ward is listening to feedback in some cases, putting their foot down on something that people feel passionate about, but overall providing a more refined experience for COD, I can understand both sides of the argument. A lot of it comes down to how you play or how you think COD should be. And while I didn't want to make the video about that, I just want to point out what's going on currently for the developer response. That's all I have for today. I appreciate every single one of you that stayed and watched all the way through, as well as the support across my other videos. Brings a tear to my eye that people still watch my content. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you in the next one.